Welcome back to the Business of Government Hour. I'm Michael Keegan, your host, and our guest today is Mary Davie, Assistant Commissioner of the Office of Integrated Technology Services, ITS, in GSA's Federal Acquisition Service. Also joining us from IBM is Paul Kayada. So, Mary, the Office of Integrated Technology Services, ITS, seeks to provide access to best value information technology and telecommunications services that support the federal government's ability to save money and reduce procurement time. To that end, would you briefly highlight some of your key strategic priorities in your office?
We've got three: delivering efficient operations, driving world-class value, and being agile and innovative. And I'll talk a little bit more about each one of those. So I think I'd mentioned previously that in ITS and maybe even across GSA and FAS for years, we were very focused on contracts in some respects. And because of the government needs and the landscape and the way things have changed, it's been clear over the last several years that this needs to be about what the customers need and how they can best utilize common solutions across agencies. So in terms of efficient operations, I'm turning ITS into a customer-focused model. So customers may have seen people from GSA in the past, come and we'll talk about a GWAC and what that can do, or a schedule, or what our network services program can do. And we're really flipping that model. And that's across FAS. One of Tom's goals is for FAS to be what's called a category manager for certain things in government. And what that means is we need to be the best in delivering whatever it is we're going to deliver. So, for instance, in IT and telecommunications, you can break that down into several spaces. You can look at IT consulting, IT hardware, software, outsourcing, security. So we're revamping the way that we focus on our solutions and the delivery to our customers in that manner. And then the contracts will support the delivery of those things. So if we're looking at things like IT outsourcing and data center consolidation and what the government needs there and where things are going, we want to create a body of people that know all about that space. What's the best way, to consolidate or move or start a new data center? What are opportunities for cloud within that? What are the considerations in how you structure a requirement or a statement of work? Who are the market leaders in that space? How is industry offering it and how are things changing? What kind of contracts would we need in our organization to support people buying data center services? And that's just one example. So really, we're moving from a contract-focused model to the solutions model. The second one is the world-class value. And we've been focused pretty keenly in FAS since Tom came on, and Dan as well, about sharing information across government and across the buying space. Today, because federal buying is so fragmented, there's so many, tens of thousands, if probably not hundreds of thousands of transactions that go on to buy. What can we provide to agencies to improve the buying power and to make better buying decisions? How much is somebody at one agency paying for a product or even a service? What's somebody else paying for a very similar product or service? What terms and conditions are they getting? So you start with things like our online tools, GSA Advantage, that has millions of products, for example, listed. And somebody may do a search and a whole list of products will come up. And today it takes a lot of work to sort of sort through each one of those, understand the differences in those products, if at all. Why are the prices different? Are the terms for shipping different? All the different considerations. So we're working with OMB and the agencies again to put as much data and information out around simply called prices paid. How much are people paying for these things? We're doing that on our Alliant GWAC, our government-wide acquisition contract, and that's in the services space. How much is an agency paying for a labor category to buy some sort of integration service versus what another agency paid for the same type of service and maybe across different contractors on our Alliant GWAC? That's what we talk about, at least in one aspect, about value. We're also trying to make it easier for customers to understand how to buy from us. A lot of what we've heard is, wow, GSA, you have so many options available. When do I use a schedule? When would I use a GWAC? How do I know which one, might be the best fit? So we have folks that sort of their whole role in life is to visit with agencies and to listen to what the needs are, kind of bring that back and figure out what the best options are to present to that agency and why they would maybe want to make one choice over another. We've also automated that process a little bit with what we call the Solutions Navigator tool on our website. So an agency can very quickly put in what they're looking for, the term, kind of what, how much they'd like to spend. Do they need something to be firm fixed price? Just all kinds of different criteria. And it takes you through a decision tree. And then at the end, we'll give you an option or more and say, here's what your choices are. And oh, by the way, if you'd like more information or would like to talk to somebody, we've got an 800 number. So all of our contact information across ITS is now consolidated. And we also have online chat. So people can immediately start asking additional questions to help them make, again, that better buying decision. And then really the third area, being agile and innovative, it's being ahead of the market, we say. So, I talked about skating to where the puck is going and anticipating if we see a movement, and a shift toward cloud, how do we need to start revamping our contracts and our solutions to help meet those needs more quickly? What kind of changes will we need to make to existing contracts, or do we in fact need to build a new contract? Our infrastructure as a service and email as a service blanket purchase agreements really did anticipate that future state. People can buy mailboxes. If they don't need a lot in the way of integration service and they know they just need to buy some additional storage space, for instance, or virtualization capability, they can do that through those BPAs. So we have a lot of choice for agencies in maybe where they are today, but also give them the ability through our contract solutions to get to where they need to be. And we're doing that with the Network Services Program.
So with a focus away from contracts and onto solutions and helping your user community figure out how to get what they're looking for, how do you then look at the portfolio of vehicles that you do have to distinguish one from the other, knowing what the right mix is?
That's a heck of a question. And that might be the surprise question. There's never an easy answer to that, and there always can be multiple choices. But, when you start really working with an agency and going through the details, a whole lot of things have to kind of come out of that discussion to get to not necessarily the only answer or the best answer, but probably the best choice for what it is they need. And a lot of the considerations revolve around everything from what does their legacy environment look like? Mm-hmm. How much money do they have to spend? Are they looking, for a service with a hardware investment, or do they want a managed service? Do they want to get into an area where they want to do some sort of performance-based contracting? So we're looking at not only requirements, but contract type, legacy environments. Do they have an incumbent they would like to give the opportunity, to compete for the future work again? What contracts might that incumbent be on? Mm-hmm. What's the best way you can buy a particular solution set through a set of contracts? So schedules are really set up for, the commercial space, right? Somebody needs a commercial service or product that's really fairly easy access. You can do a task order off a schedule after a competition. You can award a BPA or a blanket purchase agreement or a set of BPAs and then continue to compete your individual requirements against that contract for as long as it's around. If you're looking to do a large-scale integration effort, we really point people toward our government-wide acquisition contracts. And like I said, we've got them for the large businesses as well as people can get directly to veteran-owned businesses. They can get to small business. They can get to minority-owned businesses. And it gives them real flexibility in contract type. If I need something other than firm fixed price, or it's more than buying labor hours through time and materials, and I want to manage in a cost environment with detailed SLAs and maybe performance measures and look at all kinds of things like, past performance and $100 million projects, really. We'd probably work with them to point them toward a GWAC. And then in the telecommunications space, we have lots of options. The current networks contract provides for data transport, voice, video, IP. People are starting to look at cloud solutions off networks. And we have our regional telecommunications contracts that really support sort of that local voice and data needs. We have satellite contracts, satellite-specific contracts. And we have contracts that help people with the services and equipment that they need in a building, one of our connections contracts as well. So Again, there's a lot that goes into each one of those. That's why, people can go through the navigator on the web and get to a set of choices, but I think it's really important for us to understand and work with that customer directly to help point them in the right direction.
And I'd like to drill down on one particular. You've mentioned Network Services Program, which has undergone a lot of major initiatives. Networks has been a transition. You're doing Network Services 2020. There's a lot of things going on. Could you tell us what's happened and how has it helped the government?
Great. Yes. We did just complete Networks transition. Well, it's been almost a year now. So that was a heavy lift for the agencies because many things were changing during that time. The contract was actually awarded 6 years ago, and the technology landscape was changing. The contract had significantly changed from the FTS 2001 predecessor contract in terms of contract structure. Mm-hmm. There was an enormous increase in the number of services agencies could acquire through networks, having moved off of FTS 2001. So a lot more choice. And a change in the acquisition environment as well. People were had moved away from a set of contracts where they were kind of picking a company and picking a set of services into an environment where everything went through the fair opportunity and competition process. And we hadn't done that really in the network services arena. And back to the surprise question, that was probably the biggest thing that surprised me in ITS was the complexity of telecommunications. I'd spent all my career as an IT person, right? IT project management, acquisition. And I thought, well, how in the world does telecommunications be so hard and so complicated? And why does this take so long? It's unbelievable. So we made it through transition, and people really did use the Networks program to transform. And that's one of the things that we wanted to do is support the agency's transformation needs when it made sense for them through the Networks program. That's one of the reasons for the increase in services. The traditional telecom carriers were really starting to offer different types of services. So we're past that now, and we recognize that we'll have another contract transition coming soon. And so we have to work with the agencies in a couple of fronts, and we have been for the last year and a half. We looked at all the lessons learned from our move from FTS 2001 to networks and where things are today. And that included looking at, again, the contract structure, what worked, maybe what needed to be improved, the acquisition process, the systems in place to support the ordering, the provisioning, the billing, the tracking, that piece of it, the financial management systems. So NS 2020 is a strategy for the organization. Part of it is a follow-on contract. Part of it is follow-on regional contracts. And we've also done a lot of consolidation where there'll be a much fewer number of regional contracts that offer the local services because, again, with shifts in the market and the providers and the way agencies are really starting to centralize and consolidate buying, we don't need a whole bunch of local service agreements any longer. So that will be a big shift, but I think one that, again, is going to be really much more efficient and cost-effective to have a fewer number of contracts that still provide the same level of service and types of services agencies need. And then in my own organization, there'll be a big shift to, again, reflect that environment. Mm-hmm. Today, I've got a national program, and I've got 11 regions, all basically offering similar services and contracts to the agency. So that shift and consolidation of contracts is also going to result in a shift and consolidation in the organization, which means we'll be very functionally based. So there'll be local service delivery still to the customers where we need it. But we are going to consolidate things like order writing and help desk, customer outreach and support, and use the talent from around the country to best fulfill those needs for agencies rather than continue to sort of fragment it and provide, redundant services across the country. So the agencies seem to be really excited about where things are going. We recognize that we've still got a lot of challenges to get through and overcome, but having recognized now and understanding at least a little bit more the complexity of what we're dealing with, one of my number one priorities in this organization is to really help us be better buyers of telecommunications, make that transition less lengthy, less costly, less complex where possible. I've set some aggressive goals and given the folks some interesting charters to do that. But I think we can really get through this with all the good brain power we have with the agencies that are working with us.
So, Mary, we live in a very mobile society. The federal government spends more than $1 billion on wireless services plans and devices each year with the expectation that it's going to increase. What are some of the key mobility trends facing federal agencies? And more importantly, what are you folks doing at GSA to deal with this, specifically GSA's mobility program and those key components?
With the Federal Strategic Sourcing Initiative and the digital government strategy, one of the priorities for the administration really was looking at the mobile environment and specifically the wireless environment. So we had a couple of concurrent initiatives that we undertook and led with the agencies. For the wireless, what we really are after is to aggregate and leverage and, again, understand what it is we're buying and how much are we paying for these things. So sitting down with the agencies, one of the first things we attempted to do was get an inventory of all of the different contracts that are out there today. Are people buying devices? Are they buying services separately? Are they buying service and a device comes with it? Is it a managed service? Are you managing hardware? There's a lot of things to understand. And that's where that $1 billion, I think we got up to $1.3 billion. It's just a very general high-level estimate based on the data available. We also recognize that with just a consolidation of contract actions and administration of all of those contracts decreasing, there's a huge opportunity for savings, which probably isn't really calculated in our savings number. The savings number that we're looking at comes from better device management. So telecom expense management is something we'd also focus